Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third webinar. Today is Sunday, February the 17th, and let's get started on our last workshop. First thing, if you haven't already, please just go ahead and run an audio and video setup. You want to look in your lower right-hand corner and hit that little gear wheel and check the audio. If you see the bar moving, that means that your sound is working properly. So you'll hit yes, that's working, and then move on to the video test. If you can see yourself, then your video is working. And lastly, if you want to chat, you want to go ahead and click that little balloon there, and then you can view any chats. I ask that you remove any distractions. Go ahead and turn your phone off. Put up a do not disturb sign, whatever you need to do. I also want to say welcome to any of our virtual listeners. If you're listening to this a little bit later, you also want to remove any distractions so you can listen intently. And lastly, but also very important, let's do a quick quality check. If you see the little raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen there, first, if you see a red circle in that little camcorder up top, go ahead and raise your hand, please, by clicking that icon. Okay, great. Go ahead and click that again to lower your hands. If you see the words quality check at the top of the slide, please raise your hand. Thank you. And if you can hear me, then go ahead and raise your hand one last time. Great. Thank you. Everyone can lower your hands now. Our topic today is from our text, Thinking Collaboratively, Learning in a Community of Inquiry by Garrison. Today we're going to talk about some of the main points of Chapter 5, the Community of Inquiry. Our learning objectives, by the end of this workshop, participants will be able to define the 3 elements of the Community of Inquiry framework, and participants will be able to relate the elements of the Community of Inquiry framework to real-life tasks that support collaborative thinking. So just as a little overview, we're going to again talk about the Community of Inquiry, specifically the theoretical framework. And as you'll soon find out, there are 3 major elements of the framework: social, cognitive, and teaching presence. And these 3 elements intersect and work together concurrently to create an effective, collaborative educational experience. So all 3, social, cognitive, and teaching, are equally important. And again, they're going to work, they intersect to work concurrently to provide a supportive community of inquiry, hopefully to produce an environment that is focused on the intellectual or whatever the goal of the group is. So let's start off with a quick little activity. Looking at the 2 pictures on the slide, which illustration best represents the relationship among the 3 elements of the Community of Inquiry framework? I'm going to ask that you use your whiteboard tools at the top left, and if you could just click the pencil and then put a check mark either on the right or left, which picture you think the best illustration of that relationship. Okay, we got 2 check marks on the left, which I agree show intersecting circles. So again, those 3 elements intersect, whereas the right-hand picture, they're all separate. They're not touching at all. They're actually kind of linear. So thank you. Let's move on. So let's just talk about each of these elements a little bit, starting off with social presence. The participants in a community of inquiry must identify with the group and purposely build an environment with open communication to support the collaborative inquiry. So again, when you talk about a community, that implies more than one person, obviously. So this community, everyone, the participants, you want them to identify with the group or the goal of the group or whatever the topic is that has caused them to come together. And then for everyone to have the same purpose in building a supportive environment where communication can be open, where people feel free to bounce off ideas and to make and accept criticism, and ultimately work collaboratively in their academic, intellectual, or whatever the ultimate goal is, or whatever the subject of the inquiry is. Next element is cognitive presence. And this is the thinking and learning core element of the community of inquiry. So in the cognitive presence, there's a focus on collaboratively exploring problems, constructing meaning, and validating understanding for an effective community of inquiry experience. So you see there the word collaboratively again. That's going to be a hand back to, again, the social presence. But again, this is the core thinking and learning. So whatever the topic or problem that's trying to be solved, community members individually and together are able to work out the meaning, make deeper connections to that topic or subject, and ultimately come to an understanding through intellectual discourse, which produces an effective, meaningful community of inquiry experience. And last but not least, the third element is the teaching presence, which basically relates to the design, facilitation, and direction of an effective leader are required to maintain an effective and efficient community of inquiry. So although we have the social and cognitive, which are what most people think of in a community, but research has shown that it is important to have some leadership, to have a person there that can facilitate conversations or discussions, keep the group on task, possibly mediate any interpersonal conflicts that may come up, and keep the community of inquiry focused on whatever their goal is, or to continue in a productive manner to discuss the topic at hand. Okay, so based on what we just talked about, as far as the three elements of the community of inquiry framework, go ahead and look at the question here. The three elements of the community of inquiry are, and I would like for you to open your chat, which is the little balloon there at the bottom, and type A, B, or C for what you think the correct answer should be. For our virtual listeners, I'm going to ask that you also answer this question and include it in your missed class summary. Okay, great. All right, and it looks like we agree that the answer is B, social, cognitive, and teaching presence. Thank you. Okay, so now that we've talked about the three elements of the community of inquiry framework, let's do a little application with a case study. And as you read that, I'm going to set up our breakout rooms. And what I would like for you to do, first, let me go ahead. I'm going to send you a link to our Google Slides. And in this case study, you're a part of a team developing a computer-based simulation to support teaching medical students how to assess patients. Team members include a project manager, physicians, educators, and computer programmers. How can the community of inquiry framework be applied to successfully complete the project? Now, I'm not asking you to go into too much detail as far as what would technically be required to do this, but again, using our community of inquiry framework, the three elements that we talked about, if you could just come up with one example, one example for each element, and when we switch over to our breakout rooms, then you will see a little chart there that I would ask you to fill out. Go ahead and get this set up if you would, and you can just kind of think about some answers as we get the breakout rooms set up. Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. My apologies, a little technical difficulty there. Here we go now. I'm gonna ask our live participants here to all join group 1. And for our virtual listeners, I ask that you go ahead and also complete the activity and pause the recording and include that in your missed class summary. Okay, so now you should see a list of group under our participants here, group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. I'm going to ask our live participants to click, there's a door with a green arrow. If you could all click group 1, and then again, click the link for our Google slide, which will have the chart where you can enter your answer. And we have 3 minutes to complete that. And once the 3 minutes is up, I ask everyone to return back to the main room and we'll discuss it. So I know that's not a lot of time. Just go ahead and do your best to give one example for each of the 3 elements: social, cognitive, and teaching presence.
That works.
Okay, welcome back, guys. That was 3 minutes. Let me get back to, let me pull up what you were working on so that we can all discuss. Okay, just one moment. Going to I hope that was enough time for you to at least get an example for each one. Okay, now, so can everyone see our Google slide now for group one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. So again, just a quick overview of the case study. You're working on a team to develop a computer-based simulation to support teaching medical students how to assess patients. So that team has a project manager, physicians, educators, computer programmers, and probably some other people too. I purposely didn't tell you which one you were because honestly, in terms of the community, it doesn't really matter. So for social presence, could one of you just tell me what you put about your answer there, how that can be applied in this project?
Evan, do you want to take this or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll take this one. So we said this one was bouncing ideas off of each other with social presence, because this is where you get to kind of put your ideas up to other people's and see this is how you use their experience, and you help weed out your biases by talking to each other about your ideas and what you come up with.
Cool, exactly. You know, I would agree with that. How about cognitive presence? Carrie, do you want to take that?
So with cognitive presence, we were thinking that because there's a mixture of your own thinking and also um, the what's contributed to that by the social aspect as well. We were thinking about that in our answer. So we said thinking to come up with solutions. So kind of not only your thinking, but the ideas and contributing factors from your peers and their experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So like not just your thinking, but also the collaborative thinking are all part of the cognitive presence. And teaching presence, who wants to take that one?
I'll go ahead. We were just saying that someone could be that project leader. So that project manager could take the lead and they could like delegate tasks or lay out a time frame or those type of things.
Exactly, exactly. You always need that person there, like you said, to kind of delegate tasks and set a timeline, because that we know that's always important in group projects to set a timeline for certain tasks to be complete. So great job, everybody. Okay, let me get us back to our slides. Files. Just bear with me just one moment. And I'm going to go back to where we were left off. But yeah, I think you guys definitely did a great job there in applying what we were talking about, the three parts of the community of inquiry to a real life application. And the great thing about a framework is that's what it's for, to apply to different domains. It's not just, an educational setting. Here we saw another example. So thank you for that. And that's just what you saw on the slide. So now let's to summarize again what we talked about today, thinking collaboratively in the community of inquiry. We specifically talked about the framework, the three elements: social, cognitive, and teaching presence, how they interact and work concurrently to provide a supportive community of inquiry with open communication, and ultimately to give us a meaningful intellectual discourse. And sometimes it's not an end product, but the discussion continues. But and that's not bad. That's sometimes part of the process, and that's where the teaching presence is important to ensure that it's all positive and productive. So let's just do one last little activity. Overall, how do you feel about your understanding of the community of inquiry framework? I'm going to ask you to use your emoticons by clicking on your picture there, my status and settings. Oh, great. I've got 2 smiley faces. I'm going to say that's positive. Thank you very much. Our references, again, our textbook, and on our Google slide, we had an example of a computer-based simulation. We want to give credit for that also. Thank you much. That's all I have for today. Are there any questions about what we talked about today? You can either hop on the microphone or jump in the chat. No? Great. For virtual listeners, if you have any questions about today's discussion, please submit those by email. And thank you very much. That's all I have for today. If that's all, I will end the recording.